It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, we are back. It is time for another edition of the unofficial 40 podcast for Soonerscoop.com. We welcome in the entire gang. Josh, Eddie, and Bob. I am Carey Murdoch, your host, and we are here for another week. Football duties are over. We're 2 weeks past the spring game. Basketball hirings have been finalized today just before we potted. Recruiting is hitting full swing. Offers are going out, both in basketball and football, and we welcome in the entire gang, although I am not very happy because Josh is on Skype today because we've had a little snafu with, I don't know, Eddie. Here's the first thing, guys. So I called the company that does all, that we buy all our broadcast equipment from, and as I'm waiting for the, it was hold music, right?
It's like a receptionist, a receptionist.
But you were on we were on the, what's the name of the elevator music company? Muzak? Like we were basically on the Muzak hold thing.
Basically.
And I said, if I can't get this taken care of immediately, I'm going to murder someone. And then a lady picks up the phone and she says, "Don't murder me." Like, I was on hold. Like, you broke the bond of on hold. Like, are they always listening to you when you're on hold?
I think that they are. Just watch what you say. You know, it's going to be interesting.
I was so embarrassed.
It's going to be interesting today if you start getting spam ads from like defense counsels, like defense lawyers in Oklahoma. Yep. And maybe that's because you've just been on the Trajan Bridges Seth McGowan beat for too long. But maybe it's also because you sort of just basically threatened someone's life. There's not a whole lot else to add.
To be fair, I did not threaten to murder her specifically.
No, it was more of a...
I said I will murder someone.
Yeah, like if this was back in the day, they would send the cops just to make sure that that you can be close to anybody.
I don't think the cops can come and look for me because I wasn't a specific threat to a person.
That's true.
It was a murder everyone situation.
More of a
that's a lot better.
Yeah, and we're close enough to a school that you're now a threat to society.
Anyway,
literally anyone could be your victim,
right? And that's why I am so uncomfortable right now.
You are Kyle Shanahan's embodiment. That's exactly what you've become. Anyone could die.
You don't know if you will be alive by Sunday.
No, nobody can say that.
Especially if you work in broadcast equipment industry.
It's a niche market.
It is a niche market.
That's a niche market. Now you got people. The feds will be coming to certain places of
Bob, shut up.
Employment
all right,
to make
just
sure those
up.
people are okay.
Isaiah Thomas rules.
They'll be
right?
okay.
They'll
be all right.
So, I guess where we should start. I guess we should start with recruiting. That is the lifeblood of Sooner Scoop. That's where we're at. I know some new names have been added to the barbecue, the ChampUBBQ. Josh, first off, let's just lay it all out like everybody's dumb. When is the ChampUBBQ, and when does the dead period officially end for college football?
Well, they are going to reopen visits. Everything starts on June 1st. That's when the world can kind of get back to some semblance of normal in recruiting. So you're seeing everything set up. I mean, you're seeing midweek visits set up. Schools are really, because you just don't know. I mean, with the world we're living in, we don't know if it's going to come back, and just if there's some reason why, okay, the NCAA shut it down again. So they're trying to get guys on campus as early and often as possible to try and make sure, hey, we got that official visit in. Even if he can't do it during the season, we're okay. He's seen us up close. So you're seeing a lot of schools really take advantage of that. But yeah, it was funny. I was talking to one of the guys that added to the list was Luke Montgomery, big offensive lineman from Ohio. And you asked, June 18th is the weekend of the ChampUBBQ. It will actually be that Saturday, the 19th. And it's interesting talking to people. You almost get two different answers. Like there's this huge official visit weekend, which right now I am currently expecting OU at, I believe it's 19 official visitors. Yes, 19 is what I've got. And I was talking about it in Woke. There are 13 just between defensive backs and offensive linemen. So it's clear where OU is putting a lot of their energy for this 2022 class right now. But it was interesting talking to Luke Montgomery's dad, the big offensive lineman from Ohio, that has that told me this week that they will be coming in for the barbecue unofficially. He was kind of like, well, what's it look like for 2023? It's just insane what OU is doing. It's not a huge list right now, and it's going to grow a lot. But I was kind of talking to him about it. Brandon Ennis, the number 4 player in the country, the number 1 wide receiver. Makai Lemon, one of the top athletes in the country, top 75 player in the country. Malachi Nelson, the number 1 quarterback, number 2 overall player. Jordan Renault, the big defensive lineman from Louisville that's a top 15 guy in the country. And Trayon Webb, a top 70 guy in the country from Florida. So what Oklahoma is doing with its unofficial visits is just unbelievable. I mean, and then you throw in Amari Abor, Harold Perkins, guys like that from the 2022 class, Jaden Scarlett as well. So it's just really amazing that group isn't even the official visitor list. When you throw in, that group with Gavin Sawchuk and Malik Ogbo from Washington, there are so many players that really it falls into the question of how does Oklahoma navigate this? I mean, the support staff may have to sleep for a week after this thing's over because they are going to be running around constantly for 72 hours.
Okay, let's take a break. Josh, I'm going to pause here. It looks like it's working now. 2 and 1. All right, so Josh, who are there was a list I know that you had early, but who are the bigger names just in the last few days who have been added to the ChampUBBQ?
Well, obviously, like I said, Luke Montgomery's a big one. He's a, top 75 guy, one of the top recruits and, offensive line recruits in the country, and one of the best in Ohio. Obviously, you know what that means when you're going to recruit in Ohio. That's a lot to ask. So we'll see how that goes. But, then you throw in, we had a chance to confirm Chase Biddle, who I think everyone knows if there's any position in this 2022 class where OU needs to hit, it's safety. And I would say of the guys that they're zeroed in on, he and Jalen Lewis from Tennessee, they're both coming in the same weekend. You kind of hope those guys hit it off, hey, you guys could be our tandem. You could be the Fields and DTY of the future and kind of, maybe spend a few years starting in the secondary together. That's what you're hoping for. Yeah. You are fulfilling every OU fan that's like yelling at the radio right now. Better.
And he had a big smirk on his face, so I had to
Well,
say
I was thinking it, so that counts for something.
Yeah, so but that sort of, tandem, I guess. But yeah, Biddle's a guy, big, athletic. Had a chance to see him last year when I saw Jordan Hudson in person, the OU wide receiver commitment. Like I said, didn't do a lot that night, but you watch him. He's everything that they talk about wanting in a safety. He's big, he's physical, he runs well, and is definitely one of those guys that has a chance to separate the receiver from the ball. He plays that kind of game. So there's a lot to like there, but there is I'm trying to think of the new additions that we've also made over the last week, kind of going through it. Obviously, one of the guys that, if nothing else, changed his status, Jaden Rowe, the cornerback, now part of the class. I know we'll get into all that, but he'll be there. So you've got a few commitments that are going to be there. Kobe McKenzie. The other big one that I did forget, Kenyatta Jackson, the big defensive lineman from Florida, same high school as Marquise Brown, Hollywood Chaminade. So, just a very athletic guy that I think Oklahoma wasn't really seen nationally as a contender for him until probably 2 or 3 weeks ago when I started hearing this could come down to OU and Ohio State. And it's just one of those crazy realities, guys, where Miami, Florida, and Florida State, it's not like it used to be. I remember there was a rule a long time ago. I remember talking to Jeremy Crabtree about this, Carey, where if you went into that state and a kid had an offer from all three of those schools, there was no way he was leaving the state. He was going to go to one of those three schools, and that doesn't exist right now. Those three schools are I mean, they're not recruiting poorly, but which one of them is going to be like, oh, yeah, you can't go to Oklahoma? And, I mean, Florida just got stomped on national television by Oklahoma. Miami and Florida State haven't been relevant in a decade or more. So it's just kind of, I don't know. It's a weird time when you can go into Florida and not have that in-state pull like it used to be for so long.
It probably helps, too, that you already got a guy in Mario Williams, a former five-star from Florida, already on campus. You already got guys, Nick Benito is probably going to be one of the best players on the defensive side of the football. He's from Florida as well.
Yeah, I mean, and Nick is from like the holy grail of Florida. I mean, St. Thomas Aquinas.
Sure.
I mean, you talk about a place where you want to have inroads. And I think it almost helps Oklahoma with a guy like Nick. Nick was a good recruit, but he wasn't like a normal. I mean, he wasn't like every, I guess, for St. Thomas Aquinas standards, he's just a solid player. I mean, just a good, solid guy. They put out a near five-star almost every year. So to have a guy like that, and you developed him, and now he's one of the elite pass rushers in the country, that can only help OU's reputation, not just with the players, but the coaches. They're seeing OU's developing their guys, making them better players.
You know what's bizarre? I just found this list. I'm looking at it. You're talking about the big three in Florida. You can name on one hand, and maybe this is it's almost like the post OU national championship season. In 2000, Peter Warwick they had drafted as a wide receiver. Wide receiver. And then, of course, Snoop Minnis didn't play in that game, but he never made a splash in the NFL. Obviously, the biggest name you could probably think of is a guy that was a freshman when OU played him, Anquan Bolden, and he played in the league forever. Is he still playing? I don't think so, but it seems like he should still be playing. Outside of that, the most relevant wide receiver that they produced since 2000, let's see, Anquan Bolden went in the 2003 draft. The most relevant wide receiver they produced since Anquan Bolden was in 2014. You know who it was? Kelvin Benjamin. Yeah.
That ate himself into a tight end or just out of the league.
Kind of. He was Cam Newton's guy, and that was his claim to fame. He really hadn't done much. I think he signed a big contract with somebody, didn't he? And then he just never did much.
With the Bills, wasn't it?
30 years old, out of the NFL.
Benjamin is
his update right now, yeah.
And his rookie year, he went for 1,000 yards and only one time ever went over 700 again after that. His next year, he went for 941, and he never had a season after those first two where he had more than 3 touchdowns. He just fell off the map.
By the way, are we even going to talk about the Florida State player that wasn't drafted that shocked the hell out of all of us?
Well, I think it kind of wraps into what Josh was just saying as far as, even though they got him to campus, Marvin Wilson's career did not exactly go, I think, like a lot of people thought it would.
Last year was terrible. The year before that, he was great. If he left early, he probably would have been a first or second round draft pick.
Well, he had 2 years ago, it was the season cut short by injury. He had the surgery,
right?
Yeah,
that's right, yeah.
So I guess it would have been 2018 was that
2019. Had a really good year.
And then 2020 couldn't come. Yeah, that's right.
But God,
I can't help
bad investment.
I wonder how much him calling out the head coach,
Mike Norvell.
Norvell, yeah. That had to. There's some coaching staffs that are like, that's a non-starter for us. Like that's just because it's fine to have a problem with the coaching staff to do it publicly the way he did, and especially, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff at Florida State with Norvell that kind of makes you wonder, like if it wasn't a completely valid criticism, but at the same time, man, you handle business like that. Coaches, even if they don't like a guy, they'll hold rank. Like they don't usually care for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but if he was the best defensive tackle in college football, I don't think people would care what he's tweeting, right?
No,
it has
100%.
more to do with what he did or what he didn't do on the field.
Yep. Oh, consistency was a problem
Sure.
for Marvin. It was his whole career. He'd have great moments, and then I remember watching games where you were like, you forgot he was there, and then all of a sudden he'd make just an amazing play, and then he was gone again.
Let me ask you, Josh.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I'm curious, like, how often it goes through your mind where you think, like, in today's age, because, like, NFL to me is kind of the last bastion of people being able to talk like they talk or say things about people like they do. Basically treating people like livestock almost. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
That's just not something that is, in this day and age, goes over well. Like, I'm curious how often you think about, like, could I get canceled for saying this about a player?
Oh, there is more than one time when I will talk to a guy and I'm like, man, I just got done watching your tape. Loved your feet, or I love, guys your size don't usually move like that. And it's like the third text message I've sent this person. I'm like, I should back up. Like, let me hang on for a second. Like, my job makes me say weird shit, and I'm really sorry about that. I don't cuss at the kids, but just for the sake of the story here. But yeah, no, all the time. Like, you're constantly like, oh, God. But as far as the guys in my profession, I feel like I'm fairly tame. I mean, I don't think our members, and certainly people listening to this podcast, appreciate the verbal carnage that was Barry Every and the things he would say, like calling a kid a flesh bomb once upon a time. I don't even really know what that means, but it makes me uncomfortable. Just stuff like that is amazing. But really, the thing that bothers me the most right now, and it's just come up on my timeline again, it's that time of year where we get the only 25 stars were drafted. Stars don't matter. People understand math, understand it, and it just makes me crazy.
There are 35
That's totally
5
unrelated.
stars, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like 93 stars. Yeah, there's 600 of them. Like, mathematically, that should be that way. And if you look at it, your chances of being drafted as a 5-star are like 700 times more likely than as a 3-star. It's just math.
One of the guys on the radio said something to me yesterday about, I saw where only so many people were 4 stars or better that were drafted, so that must mean that recruiting doesn't matter as much anymore. And I was just like,
it's the exact opposite.
I don't know what you read, and I don't know where you got that, but I'm not commenting on that. So, I mean, it would be ridiculous. Like,
it's literally the exact opposite.
I haven't even seen the stats on stars and drafts so far this year.
Something Fox College Football put out, so I don't know whose rankings they're using. I don't know. But 110 of the, roughly 250 guys that got drafted were 4 or 5 stars.
It was probably,
that's really good.
I probably didn't see it because it's probably from somebody at Fox Sports that's blocked me.
No, there was too much research to be done for it to be someone like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't just someone yelling random garbage. Like, there should be 12 Oklahoma guys drafted this week. So, I mean, or Tulsa.
Yeah. Every year it happens like this, though.
It's never ending. And you'd think I would learn. You'd think I would mature past it, and I can't do it. Every year I get into one of these things, and I just can't help myself.
I think it is being called out more and more, though. I think more and more people, and especially probably around here, are understanding that, it does matter. And recruiting does matter, who you bring in and who you don't.
Look, I mean, all you have to do is look at Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma. I mean, how many players from those teams litter the NFL?
Sure.
Well, and the thing that never comes, or not never, but rarely comes up in the argument is, look at the guys you're talking about, these 2 and 3 stars. Where are they coming from? Central Michigan, Division II. Like, they're coming from these. It wasn't just the rankings that missed on those guys. All these coaches that, again, I always am really careful about this. I'm not saying I know more. I'm not saying anything like that. But these guys who clearly you revere didn't think they were on their level either, and now they're getting the NFL draft, and the guy they liked is nowhere. So it's not just about that. I don't know why that never gets brought into the argument. Probably because it doesn't do its best to shoot down that rankings don't matter. Like, a lot of people miss.
If anything, it's just that talent matters. That's all the NFL cares about. I mean, it's like I said, the NFL might be the most cancelable sport out there because all they care about is talent. I mean, when it comes down to it. Now, when it comes down to a first rounder versus a third rounder, maybe character falls in. I mean, we can get into the Ronnie Perkins stuff. But, I mean, obviously there are some teams that just will take someone and take them off the board. And they say they're not, because of some questionable character traits, we don't have them as a first-round pick or a second-round pick. And for whatever reason, I think a lot of teams did that with Ronnie Perkins, and he fell to a team that, is historically, you look at some of the players that they've taken, they value talent more so. They feel like their culture will overcome any shortcomings in character, and they've done that with Randy Moss. They've did it with Corey Dillon, I think, was probably one of the first examples, the running back. But you can go.
LeGarrette Blount.
LeGarrette Blount. I mean, my God. Antonio Brown. I mean, go down the list. I mean,
Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah. I mean, not this, and that's a disservice to Ronnie Perkins and
that's my
Ramondre
thing, though.
Stevenson.
Is like, what are we really talking about here? You know what I mean? When you're talking about those two guys, it's like we're talking about. They failed a drug test because they were smoking weed, right?
Yeah, I mean,
unless it's something out there that we've never found out about, that there was some type of PED thing.
I do think the whole Perkins thing about, he was given the, I think teams knowing that he was given a waiver,
sure,
and then he was eligible to come back, and he still failed to meet the requirements to come back. Like that was I'm sure that's a red flag for a lot of teams, more so than Ramondre, who just served out a suspension.
But it pales in comparison to somebody like the Josh Bell kid that the Cowboys drafted that had 12 instances of basically beating the shit out of his girlfriend. Like, that's insane that those two would be seen by teams as the same thing.
I don't think they are. But you still have to be available to play, regardless.
No, I get it.
I mean,
it's also something that isn't tested in the NFL, though.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that they just fell because they fell. I don't know if it had anything to do with...
But, guys, I know this came up on the board, but I got to think that Ronnie Perkins and Ramondre Stevenson were like, really, Trajan Bridges? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're...
Sure. Now, I can see that.
I cannot get that out of my head. And I know people were like, oh, fuck you, that's not... How dare you say that? But I think it has something to do with it. It's like, okay, these two were suspended with that guy, and now he's just been involved allegedly in a robbery. Like, if that dude had problems and Lincoln Riley defended him,
I think it would be naive.
What about these other two guys?
I think it would be naive to think, too, that teams wouldn't put 2 and 2 together as far as the Bridges stuff and how that affects Perkins and Stevenson. But I also don't know if I could go as far to say that actually caused a drop.
But we know that NFL teams, they're spending money, and they want to make sure that they're not paying for damaged goods. I mean, if we're going to talk livestock terms again, it's just, I don't know. I can't help but think that had something to do with it.
I don't think Stevenson
guilt by association.
I thought Stevenson would go like in the 5th or 6th round. I didn't think he fell.
I thought he was a 4th round type guy. I mean, to me, the biggest surprise of the person that fell that far was probably Tylan Wallace. Just based on what he did early in his career before he got injured.
Which I can completely understand. Like, I mean, talk about buying damaged goods. I could understand that because teams aren't able to put these guys through physicals and through, their own testing as far as, get them inside of their training facility or whatever.
Yeah, and you can't do the in-person physical and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I could understand that. I don't know. From a situation standpoint, though, and what they are now, I don't know if Ronnie could have gone to a better team. I mean, I have faith that Bill Belichick will figure out a way. Matt Patricia will figure out a way to use them.
Well, and they didn't pick up Sony Michel's 5th-year option.
Especially Ramondre. I mean, I don't think that they're necessarily... They're known for using a bunch of different running backs, right?
Yeah.
And getting rid of them early instead of late.
Yeah, it's
usually
good.
it's 1 year too early.
It's good.
Belichick.
it's good for Ramondre's present, not so great for his future to be going to New England.
Well, you show out, you'll be able to get a better deal.
Yeah, they just won't pay you. You have to go get your money somewhere else.
No doubt.
So, I mean, but overall, the draft, I mean, it was about what we expect. I mean, Creed.
I was a little surprised that Creed didn't go to Pittsburgh and that Pittsburgh didn't use an offensive or a pick for a center, but
that 55th pick.
Yeah, the 55, the second round pick. But I mean,
who did they take there?
Who did they take? It was.
It's a mystery. We'll never know.
No, God,
don't care.
I thought I had.
No Steeler fans in the house, obviously.
No, I don't cheer for criminals. They took the tight end, the Freiermuth kid, from Penn State. But I mean,
I had no idea there were that many tight ends in the country. I mean, they went everywhere in that draft.
I guess that's good news for the not Grant Calcaterra, but Austin Stogners of the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
As long as he doesn't lose
Braden
his leg.
Willis. Yeah, that's true too.
So
falling to Kansas City though is a great situation.
I will say I'll take full credit for Creed going online and suggesting barbecue joints because we had a DM discussion about that. And no son jokes, all right? I've had enough of that. It's over. It's done.
It was weird seeing his real dad, Carey. It felt unnatural. I was like, this ruins all of it.
It just shows you that I am not his dad. I mean, that his dad is a large man, and I am not a large man. I'm round, but I'm not tall.
Like I said, I felt like that was I was like, okay, it's over now. We can let go of the joke. It's finally done.
What's the deal with the house, by the way? Man, his family is living large.
That's just Oklahoma living.
You can build bigger houses in Shawnee, I guess.
Shompton. Shout out.
Shompton. By the way, I had a chance. Josh was running an errand before the show. I had a chance to show Eddie all the hail damage. He was impressed.
A lot of hail damage.
There was a piece of hail that hit my car so forcefully it actually ripped the steel on my car.
That's crazy. I mean, like, I guess you think about it, like, you know, boats hit icebergs all the time. Like, so I guess it makes sense, but that's just crazy that it can just cut through that stuff like that. Of all the stuff I saw, Joe C's video was insane.
I would not open my front door. It was so scary. I mean, it sounded like people were just throwing baseballs at my house.
Telling you, man, this North Norman area it was pounded. And it's crazy that, you know, if Bob's house was, 2 miles north, it would be bad.
Just a little bit south and east. And it was like rain,
don't say it, Bob.
Some hail, but survived this one.
You blew it north.
I'll take this over tornadoes.
Yes.
Any day. As much as my life is hell because I've got to get adjusters showing up. My car is probably totaled. I mean, there's not a panel on that car that doesn't have a huge dent in it.
I was thinking it was going to be like massive basketball sized, like just completely unrecognizable.
You know that car that when you were on ESPN, the Beat Texas car?
Yeah.
Have you ever taken part in a sledgehammer to a car?
No.
Have any of you guys done that?
Yeah, in high school it was a tradition for one of our rivalry games.
Yeah, we did that in high school too. It is really
smashing up BMWs.
I mean, like, you think if you take a sledgehammer to a car, like, you're going to do some damage. It's hard to do damage to a car. Like, you swing that thing and you think, I'm going to cave this hood in. And it's like you put a dent in it, but it's not like you ruin the car.
We never touch cars. Vandalism, only houses.
Mailboxes.
And mailboxes, yes.
I had the mailbox discussion the other day. I played some mailbox baseball.
We would do that. Do a little night golfing as well during Christmas season.
The thing that you don't know about mailbox baseball is the recoil
Oh yeah,
is
it's not
insane.
good.
Oof.
You can really mess up your car.
Yeah, by the bat coming back against the car.
Right.
That's why we just pushed him over.
You just got out of the car and just pushed him over?
1,000%.
What's the fun in that?
Because it's pretty funny. I mean, I could go push your mailbox over right now.
I don't think you could. I don't think you could.
So.
We'd have to see what kind of brick it is. There was
It's not
a couple neighborhoods.
Look out that window and tell me if you think you could push that mailbox over.
Oh, not that one.
Yeah.
Yep, not that one.
For some reason, I was thinking it was brick. The brick mailboxes, you can push those things over very easily.
I've had someone take out a brick mailbox of mine before.
You can also, you do a lot of fun things.
That does a lot of damage to your car, though, if you hit a brick mailbox.
Yeah, you don't want to run it over. That's why you get out of the car and you just push it over.
So, anyway.
But the best is night golf. I mean, that's the best game of all time. It's when people put the lights, lining their street, and you just kind of take the one end of it, and you can either hang out of the window with a hockey stick and just... or you just take the end of it and you put it in the side of the car, close the door, and then just drive off. And they all are littered down the street. It was back in the day, though. It was more like 2004, 2005.
You think that's a cold case somewhere in the Putnam City
It might
Police
be.
Department?
It might be.
Is there a Putnam City Police Department?
There's a Putnam City, campus
War
cops.
Acres.
Yeah,
War Acres.
You don't want to do anything over in that area.
Yeah, don't if you're doing 36 and a 35, you will get arrested.
Yeah,
Don't mess around.
You might not want to do that over there.
Okay, so
We stayed in our privileged community of Northwest Oklahoma City.
So we've talked about ChampUBBQ, and Josh, you mentioned midweek official visits, things like that. How much of that are you kind of catching wind of at this point?
A fair bit, because there are, like I said, there are guys that are already doing other things. For example, Gentry Williams was going to come because originally the barbecue was supposed to be June 11th. And then there were other weekends that were kind of conflicting, and it was going to make it a difficult thing. So Oklahoma shifted it back to June 18th. Well, they had several visits that were set up, like Derek Brown, the rush linebacker from Texas High, and Gentry Williams, both. They were going to come in on June 11th, but when OU moved it, they kind of had to. They both had already made plans at other places. I know Derek Brown is supposed to be at Texas A&M that weekend, on the June 18th weekend. So I know Derek Brown is supposed to come in June 14th and come in kind of midweek. Now, I believe that to be an unofficial visit, and I think he's going to take his official for the Nebraska game, which, Bob and I have talked about. That kind of sounds like the early season game that Oklahoma is going to put a lot of energy into getting kids to campus for their official visits. I know Raleek Brown will be in that weekend as well. So that's kind of looking like the next kind of big moment. But, yeah, you're seeing some stuff. Gentry, I'm sure they're going to get him down to campus. I don't know if they'll kind of do the same thing. They may push him and try to get him in for the Nebraska weekend for his official visit. But, as far as it's just one of those things where he can come down several times. So I'm going to guess they try and do something similar with him, maybe have him come down on a Thursday where, Roy Manning, Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley, they can all just kind of shower him with attention and really make sure it's clear to him how important he is to their effort. So you're starting to see some of that, but I think Oklahoma is pretty happy so far with what that June 18th is producing, getting a lot of the guys. Because you look at the list, and I'm not sure it's all of OU's absolute top guys, but I think what it does is, say you start to get some of those offensive linemen to commit, or some of those DBs, or some of those guys. Well, then you get to go to those higher-end guys and say, hey, man, we love you. We're running out of spots. We want you to be in this class. Would you like to come take a visit, kind of see if we're going to be something you're serious about? It's a careful pressure. You have to be careful how hard you push some of these elite guys, but it does give you that chance to say, hey, we only have so many spots, and we want you to be part of this. So, again, I think it's an interesting method where they might get some of their guys that are definite takes, but aren't the guys that, that they are going to have to wait as long as possible for.
kind of a two-part question, just as far as like ChampUBBQ and like the reopening of recruiting that I want to ask both of you. Is it like are we prepared to like know how different this is going to be and how wild this is going to be over the next, I guess, month of June, and with kids getting back out to campuses and being able to kind of be able to talk to coaches again, being able to do things. And I guess on the kind of following up on the other side of that, do you think that there's going to be a not rash, I guess, but do you think there's going to be a rush of people committing that we've never seen before, as far as because they're going to be caught up in the excitement of being able to take visits? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask there?
No, I get what you're saying completely. Just kind of the idea of these guys are finally able to take visits, and there's been a year away from it. I mean, so most of these guys have no knowledge of what this stuff feels like to even just be hosted for an unofficial visit. They've never, I mean, very few of these guys have even been, really to a campus and to a game environment. So it's just going to be kind of from 0 to 100 just overnight in recruiting. So I absolutely think you're going to see a big run of commitments in June. I think it's going to be crazy. I don't think it's just for Oklahoma. I think it will be nationwide, where guys take 2, 3, 4 official visits in the matter of a month and then think, okay, I'm ready to decide. Because just like what we were talking about with Oklahoma a little while ago, where they want to get, or, not Oklahoma, but just schools in general, they want to get these guys to campus. So if everything shuts down, they'll be able to say, hey, you came and saw us. You feel comfortable with us. You know us. You've met us. All those things. It's the same that's true for the kids, because they want to be able to take all the visits they possibly can before it goes away again, if it does. So there are kids that are going to, really hammer out a bunch of official visits and keep themselves busy in June. And frankly, it's a good month for it, because there's not a lot of stuff going on. There's no track for the guys that run track. There's a very limited camps. You're not going to be messing with off season that much for your high school teams. So there's a lot of availability to go do these things. So I think guys, like I said, I know of a guy I mentioned in Woke this week, a new offensive lineman that we're still kind of confirming with him for his official visit, but I've been told he will come. He's trying to set up all 5. Like he wants to have that done. So we'll see kind of what exactly plays out. But yeah, I think, because you're seeing it now, guys. Ever since the NCAA announced that this was going to reopen in June, you've seen a massive fall off in commitments. Guys are all kind of pumping the brakes, because why hurry? I'm going to go take my visits in the summer, and then, we're kind of off to the races again. I think it'll be a lot like what we saw, last April, May, when everything started to close down and the guys started to realize there were only so many spots. They may not get to take an official visit. You better commit to where you want to go.
It'll be interesting, because a lot of kids are trying to do those 5 visits within that 2-month time frame. What's that going to mean for September through November? Are you going to be able to have big visit weekends, or have you already done everything you possibly can to where those in-season visits don't resonate nearly as much as they used to? Like, you kind of gear up for that one weekend. We talk about Nebraska. If you're looking down the road, maybe Iowa State. Is that going to be something that doesn't really pan out because you did everything you possibly could in June and July and you got the results that you were looking for?
I'd imagine that kids are going to have to make decisions too, as far as and I guess Oklahoma kids, guys that are being recruited by Oklahoma probably don't have to worry about this, but I'd have to think that there's going to have to be decisions made as far as, do I go to a camp this weekend, or do I go and visit a campus? And I guess you could do one and the same and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you were going to camp and visit a campus at the same time. But there's only so many weekends in a summer.
Yeah, my biggest thing is I think, especially Eddie, like you said, at a school like Oklahoma, I don't think they have to have the same level of concern, because, like I said, you're hoping that ChampUBBQ, you're going to knock out 4 or 5 commitments. I mean, I know that's going to get OU fans excited, but I would guess that's what they're hoping. They've got 3 or 4 guys that they are hoping when those guys leave campus, they're on the books for us. Now, other visits may still happen, but at least that guy is on board. You can start to kind of put him in your tally. What is going to be interesting, does that allow Oklahoma to use those weekend visits during the season to really isolate? Like, we're going to have Gabe Dindy and 2 other guys, or we're going to have, Gentry Williams and 3 other guys. Like, really be able to zero in on these. You guys are elite. Lincoln Riley's going to spend almost the whole weekend with you. He's going to make you bacon with your name on it. It's so personal. I mean, like, that kind of thing where you've got this mass weekend where a big thing is going to happen, and there may be another weekend where OU has 8 or 9 guys come in over the summer. Does that allow Oklahoma to then kind of turn and make each weekend during the season a little bit more of a centralized focus on 3 or 4 of their really top-end elite guys?
I'm curious kind of like how this is going to go with – I mean, we know how it'll go with the high-end guys. Everybody's going to pressure them. But with all the transfers and things and the numbers and people coming back, like how much that's going to confuse things in terms of, people kind of slow playing, a lot. Like I said, not the high-end guys, but the mid-tier guys. I mean, I have to think that there's going to be a lot of teams kind of trying to just slow play guys.
Well, that's where you get into the portal conversation. Like, how much is what these schools have learned in this kind of first off season of the portal? How do they weigh that against, okay, we could have this corner transfer, from some SEC school, or we can take this guy. So it's almost like having a whole, I mean, I know we've talked about it, it's not a novel idea, but you have a whole new recruiting pool that you kind of have to weigh against. Do we want Eric Gray, who may only be a 1-year guy, or do you go and get a running back that maybe is not going to be ready to help you in year 1, like that transfer from Tennessee would, but is a guy you're going to have for a few years and you can kind of build your roster? It's just interesting, those rentals. And I know some people have kind of brought up like, high school kids need to jump on this because there's, fewer high school offers. I don't know how you make sense of that. There's still the same amount of scholarships around college football. Like, I don't understand how that argument happens. Like, now you may fall farther down the line. It may be a deal where 4 years ago you'd have gone to Oklahoma, but instead now you're going to go to Kansas State or something. But there's no, like, it didn't, because guys can transfer now, they're going to leave that school and go to a new one. Well, the old school now has another opening. Like, I don't really understand how people think that the numbers have somehow changed. It's still the same amount of scholarships.
And I also think now the token visit needs to happen. You know how much I've hated the token visit for years, Josh, but Wanye Morris is a great example, right? If OU doesn't get that token visit back in the day, does everything come together as fast as it did when he hit the portal? I mean, for some of these kids, just getting them to campus this first time around might end up helping you 2-3 years going down the road if they ever do enter the portal at the school that they were at. Even if they didn't pick you initially, you've set the groundwork for what you can do during the second chance.
I think it makes it more important than ever to use up all of those official visits that you have. That number that the NCAA assigns, which I believe is 55.
I was going to ask. Like, I can't remember what that number was, but I knew that there was a cap at some point.
Yeah, I think that's right. But why wouldn't you use it? Because of that very reason that Bob's talking about. And it's something that I'm hearing more and more staffs kind of bring up is, we may not get this kid this time, but he's going to go to that place that, his home state school that's in trouble anyway. And then a year or two from now, hey man, we might have something cooking with this guy, and he'll fit in because X is going to graduate that year anyway. So there's a lot of that, a lot of conversation about it's not just recruiting for 2022. You might be building your 2024 roster from a guy that picked another school when he signed. So there's absolutely some of that kind of jockeying for position going around. Now, you have to be careful. You don't want to do too much of that and waste your time on guys that you're not going to get, and then don't get the guys you do need to get to fill out your roster. But yeah, I think there's absolutely a chance where you say, for some elite receiver or some elite quarterback that maybe he's only taken 3 or 4 officials, hey man, come in, give us a look, and whatever. I mean, they don't have to put it out there that this is to recruit you out of the portal in a few years, but you can just give us a look, and who knows what could happen, kind of thing.
God, that could get dirty.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I guess not even. I guess the right way would be to say it could get dirtier.
Well, I mean, if you ask Arkansas fans, it already has. I mean, and Mike Woods did even visit OU once upon a time. So, it's a hard life out there.
Yeah, those people are fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, why would a wide receiver go from Arkansas to Oklahoma unless there's cheating? It just wouldn't make any sense at all.
I think we found that the Arkansas fans are
they're unstable.
Crazy.
They're unstable.
Don't do it, Carey. Don't do it. You've learned. You're not this guy anymore.
You've learned.
I'm not going after their legends like Rex Burkhead.
Matt Jones.
Ryan Mallett, or those are the Arkansas football legends. I'm not going to disrespect Darren McFadden. I like him.
I like him, but I still remember the argument that he was better than Adrian, and I was like, you guys are high. You're just high.
Do you like Matt Jones more than Ryan Mallett as a college player?
100%.
Yeah.
He was in that 7 overtime madness. I'll never forget that game. I remember we were waiting to go out that night, like go out in some bars, some parties and stuff, and we literally didn't leave until the end of that game, and we kept like another 10 minutes, and it ended up we were like 2 hours late.
He was also a part of the world's worst bowl game, the 2001 Cotton Bowl.
That is true.
Yep.
Guys, I dare say we should leave that like off the pod. Like we can't even call that's a game we do not speak of. That was a miserable event all the way around.
I mean, they won.
I mean, great defense, just the rest of it sucked.
Yeah, set offense back.
I think they had
years.
56 total yards of offense or something around there.
Arkansas
did.
Yeah, no, they did. Mm-hmm. They did. I've looked at that box score before. It was something insane.
65 maybe. I'm getting the numbers back.
I think they completed like 2 passes. It was something insane like that. They were just abysmal. And OU, to be fair, was really, really good on defense that year.
Slept in a car the night before that game.
In Fair Park?
No, I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
I slept next to a buddy
City.
who connected with his girlfriend about 5 feet to my left in a really large bed. It was not great. Scarring moment for me.
Scarring, but also a moneymaker as well. You've sold that video
it was New
all
Year's
over the place.
Eve. I'm not faulting the guy.
Well,
Any accidental touching?
Any bowl game that starts at 10:30 in the morning isn't worth my time.
Did you ever at one point fear that you were going to be in a threesome? 2 guys and a girl?
No.
Well, MMF?
Nope. There was a discreet move, because again, it started while I was asleep, and then you wake up and you're like, what do I do here? Like, I can't just get up and walk out of the room. So it was awkward.
I would have gotten up and got out of the room. I would have been like,
yep.
Screw you guys. I'm not
I would have to think
this.
that's a situation that you couldn't stand up to get out of the room, right? Just agree with me and we'll move on.
Let me ask you guys, moving on to a little team stuff, what's the temperature of the room on Spencer Rattler as the number 1 overall pick next year?
Again, this is one of those things that I feel like I don't know why I should be surprised by it, but I feel like there's
Is he the lazy pick? Is he just the easy pick?
There's some of that.
I think that there's a little bit of that, but I think that there's also this segment of people that are surprised by it somehow.
Yeah,
Am I the only one that's kind of feeling that? Like, that people are somehow surprised that Spencer Rattler...
If they're surprised, they just haven't been paying attention to all the top quarterback returnee lists that have been out there.
Sure. I think that maybe that's a little bit of it. And then when you add in the fact that it's...
And I think it would only be his second year as a starter. So I think people are like, really? He's already gone? Yes.
That makes sense.
He's already going to be gone.
But they're almost in a position where he kind of needs to go. Like, I mean, as crazy as that
Oh,
sounds.
he needs to have Spencer Rattler needs to make the jump that he. I mean, it was obvious that he made a jump.
He's not the number one pick right now. I mean, you're assuming a lot.
You're assuming that Oklahoma gets back to what Oklahoma has done over the last couple years.
Yeah.
And maybe that's almost discrediting what Baker and Kyler were able to do, even a Jalen Hurts. But if Jalen Hurts can be somebody that makes progression in Lincoln Riley's offense, I would think that Spencer Rattler's progression is, I mean, you just give him half of the number of touchdowns that they dropped a year ago, and his numbers are all of a sudden that much better.
Yeah. And we don't know. We've never seen Lincoln Riley with a freshman quarterback. I mean, we just haven't. You've seen Baker come in as a transfer. He played a year somewhere else. Kyler he started 3 games before, and then he spent 2 years before he was ever the starter. So, to me, what Kyler did is probably undersold is how amazing that was for him to come in and win a Heisman and to be the first overall pick with 1 year of starting under his belt.
All the while going through a spring in which he was playing baseball half the time.
Exactly. So Spencer, we're not judging him based on his freshman. We're projecting him, to beat Baker and Kyler, and he's not there yet. He's not the number one pick yet. You have to take a leap of faith to say that he'll be there. So I don't think there's anything wrong with projecting him, but sitting there saying he's the best quarterback that's going to be in the draft right now, he's not. And is the Coastal Carolina kid, is he draft eligible? Because people leave him out of the conversation when they talk about
the
top
guy that
quarterbacks.
I had kind of forgotten about that's in the conversation is the kid at Cincinnati.
Guys, have you watched him much? I think it's insane he's part of that conversation.
Really?
I saw him play late in the year. When
I just saw what they did. Yeah, like I would see the highlights and shit like that. I can't say that I've sat and watched him the entire time.
And yes, Carey, the Grayson McCall kid would be eligible. He's a redshirt sophomore.
Desmond Ritter is the Cincinnati's kid's name. And
and there's also the kid from Liberty, the Malik Willis kid that a lot of people like.
The Athletic had him going 5th overall, I believe, in the 2022 mock draft. And then you throw in JT Daniels and obviously Sam Hallett.
I don't think highly of JT Daniels at all.
Really?
Nope.
I think his arm strength is horrific for a legit draft pick.
Well, Jake Fromish?
It is a little Jake Fromish, yeah.
I think this is the overcorrection.
This is the reverse correction, yeah. I am not in love with JT Daniels like I was with
What about Slovis at Southern Cal?
He's a dude. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I like him.
I think it's Howell, Rattler, and Slovis. And I think they are clearly the 3 right now that you would say are your most likely.
Although, you know what? What's weird is USC people don't think that highly of Slovis.
Well, it's funny because I was just going to ask you guys, do you feel like we have more concerns and questions about Spencer Rattler than like the national media does?
Sure,
100%.
because we've seen every one of his snaps.
Yeah, it's just interesting because like at the same time, defensively, I'm like, guys, I think you guys need to buy into what's happening a little more here.
Like, I love what I've seen of Hal, but I've also seen some just shit plays from Hal, too. From North Carolina.
Just turn on the film in the second half of the Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
They were awful.
Yeah. But they were great in the first half.
Sure. Yeah.
He was great.
It was a little bit of everything in that.
And it was the opposite in the Florida State game where they were terrible in the first half and just came roaring back, but it just wasn't quite enough.
I will say, I don't doubt Hal's arm strength. His deep ball is really good. But I don't know about him as an overall quarterback just because he does so much in the run game. It's kind of like, who took Ian Book? Was it San Francisco? No.
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Oh, yeah, New Orleans. No, it was New Orleans, yeah.
Which, good luck.
No, Minnesota Command.
It's like they drafted another, what's his name, from BYU.
Yeah.
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill.
I don't think he's as athletic, like not playing quarterback, right? Ian Book.
He just can't throw. He's really athletic. He can run.
No.
He's a pretty good runner. He is.
He can
a little
run.
bit better than I was thinking.
He's not Taysom Hill. I agree with you there, but he's pretty athletic. But I agree with Carey as well.
I'd rather have Ian Book as my quarterback, right?
Ooh.
I'd rather have Taysom Hill.
Really?
From what little I've seen of him as a starter.
What you can do with him,
I think I just have this like.
He just throws better than I thought he did. When he became a starter and they lined him up and just let him drop back and pass, I was shocked at how well he was as a passer, how good he was as a passer.
Especially when Breeze was hurt there for those couple weeks during the middle of the season.
Like, it made sense that they started him over Jameis Winston, watching him play.
I love getting back to
guess.
But I think it's just overall, it's not a eye-popping quarterback class, at least at this point. It doesn't seem that way.
And
I think it's really deep. I think there's a lot of good players. You don't have that Trevor Lawrence, that Andrew Luck, that one dude that you're like, whatever else, that guy is no doubt. I think everybody has their knocks, their questions. And I think Spencer Rattler, I don't know that he'll get to the level of the two guys I just mentioned, but I think there's no doubt that with his arms out, the way he throws the ball, if he can show all the decision-making and the processing that they're looking for, he can be the clear number one guy.
By the way, who does Mac Jones sue for, or who does Justin Fields sue for all the Mac Jones hype and the slander on him? Mac Jones.
What do you mean?
Mac Jones was not going number 3 ever.
Supposedly the 49ers front office had Shanahan wanted Mac Jones and John Lynch wanted Fields.
And so they took the North Dakota State guy?
I mean, not Fields,
So they took
Trey
Trey
Lance.
Lance.
Sorry. John Lynch wanted Trey Lance.
I just would not want Mac Jones over those two guys.
That's the question. Like, how are we? No, God, no. I still think Mac Jones right now, everybody's like, oh, Mac Jones at 15. If he wasn't drafted by the Patriots, there would be a lot more people asking questions. But people are convinced because they hit on Tom Brady that the Patriots know something not everybody else knows. He's a decent arm. He's a smart kid, sure, all that stuff. But, there's plenty of question marks about Mac Jones.
I don't think that you can compare the two as far as what they've been able to produce on the field in terms of wins for their program. But haven't we seen the Patriots already draft a Mac Jones type guy in Jarrett Stidham? I thought, and I was completely wrong about Jarrett Stidham.
I was too.
I thought he was going to be really good.
I did too.
Art Briles screwed him over, man. I don't know, though.
Should have stayed at Tech. Or with Tech.
Way back when?
That was the first place he committed, right? At Rivals Camp, didn't he?
I don't know if it was at a Rivals camp, but I know Tech was where he originally committed. Was that when Leach was still? That wasn't that far back.
No,
was it?
that would have been Kingsbury.
No, yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No, I mean he's another one that I thought was going to be great and just wasn't. But I think Bill Belichick just wants a quarterback where he can eliminate kind of the unknown. He wants a guy that's going to be back, just distributing the ball from the pocket. I think he's one of those holdovers that still doesn't believe in the running quarterback.
Well, he has Cam Newton.
And it hasn't gone well.
Sure.
Right, exactly.
I was listening to a podcast this week, and they were talking about that first time that, Cam Newton and Mac Jones walk onto the field. Cam's going to be like, who is this little bitch? Who is this guy? He's nobody.
Why does he have moobs?
Yeah, Cam's 6'5", he's out of Central Casting, and Mac Jones looks like just any dude. He looks like he could be an IT programmer.
But then they'll start throwing the football, and then you'll realize that rag arm is a rag arm.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Yeah, Cam's got an absolute cannon.
Not anymore. He doesn't. That's his problem. He can't throw the ball.
Yeah,
I just hope that he dresses him for all the games. I want to see Mac Jones showing up in a fedora with a bow, with a boa around his
a wood rim
big ass feather.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
He's gone to scarves though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he just wears whatever.
I think the worse he gets, the
really
weirder
strange.
he dresses.
The thing you have to give up to Mac, he has absolutely turned into the Crash of his body type and everything. He hasn't tried the Tom Brady side by side. That's amazing. You got dude.
Oh, it was great.
And I know Woody and some of our guys at Rivals have always talked about that, him just being a dude's dude, and the way he has handled himself absolutely feels that way. That's a guy you could have a beer with and be pretty chill about.
Rivals legend. There's no doubt about it.
Now I tweeted this out. Just about Oklahoma having 3 defensive players drafted, and the fact that they lose their 2 biggest playmakers. 3, you call them 3. You really lose 3 of your biggest playmakers. Yet you return a defense that looked pretty damn good in the spring game, and you've got young guys that we all know, Woody Washington, DJ Graham. I mean, guys in the secondary. I mean, safety still remains a concern there. We didn't see Jeremiah Cradell. But up front, I mean, you talk about the dudes that they've got in Nick Benito and Isaiah Thomas, and, we'll see if Jalen Redmond can make that jump. But here's my question. Who are the guys that are drafted on this defense right now? Not even next year, but who are legit draft picks? Like, I'm sure Isaiah Thomas will get drafted. I'm not sure where.
Just completely guessing. The first thing comes to mind, like third, fourth round.
For Isaiah?
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think. I mean, if you got to start at the top, though, you're going Perry on Winfrey, and I think that he could end up being the highest draft pick OU's had, right? Mm-hmm. Or not had ever. I don't think he's going to go 3 like Gerald did, but I
think he and Benito could both go first round?
I do.
How high could a Perry on Winfrey go?
I would say like 12 to 15.
See, I was
probably
gonna
be like the ceiling.
Depending, and this is the thing I love about the mock draft process in 2022 is like, not only are you predicting who's going to go, but what teams are going to need what at what point.
Yeah.
Like, if you told me he was going to be the number 8 pick in the 2022 draft, I guess I could believe it. I'd say somewhere in between 8 and 15 would probably be like the tops for him in a perfect scenario.
He's just got to, and I say this
just don't kill anybody
lovingly.
This summer.
Yeah, he's got to keep his nose clean, which hasn't always been his history. And he also wore thigh pads with Mike Myers and Jason on them in the spring game.
He went up in my 2022 mock draft because of that.
He just skyrocketed up John Gruden's list. Like, I guarantee
weird.
it.
Like, when I noticed that in the picture, I was like, is that Mike Myers and Jason?
I can't not see it every time I see him. Or, like, see that picture. I think a really interesting guy over, and who knows, where he ends up and when he ends up coming out, is like, where does a David Awegbu end up in the NFL draft? Because
he
from
could
a
be
talent
the most
standpoint,
potential NFL talent on this entire defense. Josh, you agree with that?
I would. I mean, you talk about a prototypical guy. He's almost like you wouldn't ask for that. Like they'd say that, they couldn't make up this story. Nobody'd believe it. Like, as a linebacker with his measurables and speed, you're like, that's not supposed to happen. It doesn't work like that. And I think his upside is just enormous. Another guy, just to kind of move along the same lines, Reggie Grimes. Reggie Grimes, you talk about a guy that looks like an NFL defensive end, 6'4", 260, big long arms, has obviously his dad played. I mean, there's a lot there that I think you like. I mean, it's just Brian Asamoah. I mean, there's a lot of guys as you go through this list that you can find arguments to why they would really work in the league.
Any thoughts about a potential defensive back being a second, third round pick, like a Woody Washington, maybe?
I think
I'm all
Graham's
aboard
making the leap first.
I'm all aboard the DJ Graham wagon. That's
no, that can't be this year, obviously, because you don't be a sophomore. Sure. But yeah,
and I say that as a guy who, of his class, he was one of the guys I was lowest on, and I'll totally own that. I thought he was a good player. I didn't think he moved like you needed to as a corner. I thought he was a little upright, played a little high. I thought he was going to be a little stiff as a corner, and man, I don't see any of that. Like, I don't know if I was just absolutely wrong or if they worked on something. I don't know what it was, but he looks like a different athlete. And then you throw on the fact that he does have long speed. He'll run well in the 40. I mean, there's just a lot to like about him.
He's one of those guys, Josh, I don't know how. Go ahead, Bob.
When you saw him, Josh, he thought he'd be wide receiver. So who knows what kind of technique he really was using in the secondary back in high school. And it's just a total different mindset now for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was a receiver return man when I saw him, for Keller Central. I mean, he was that's who he was. But yeah, I mean, just, I don't know that gets talked about enough. We talk about Roy Manning as a recruiter and all his energy. But for a guy that a lot of people doubted as a corners coach because he kind of had more of a linebacker's background, man, all he's doing is turning out good corners right now, just one after another.
The fact that they got somebody like, I guess you could say it's kind of his first, skin on the wall, but like the fact that Trey Brown got drafted tells me everything I need to know about what Roy Manning's doing. I know that Trey has undeniable speed, but he wasn't exactly playing up to that level 3 years ago, right?
Did you see the stat that, when he had that chase down in the Big 12 game, that was faster? He was clocked faster than any NFL player last year.
Even DK Metcalf when he was chasing down.
That's a good question. I think they said it was like 23 versus like 22.6 or something.
I guess they're teammates now. We can get that race set up at some point.
Did you see the comments? And I think it was, Carroll was saying they don't necessarily see Trey Brown as a slot guy. Like, they drafted him to play corner, just corner. And I know people are like, well, what's the difference? Well, there's a clear difference, but they want him to play wide, apparently, which is really interesting.
And here's the thing you guys were talking about DJ Graham. Like, I don't know what his height is. You guys can tell me. I don't concern myself with that because he's so long. Like, he plays, like, he's just arms.
Trey?
No, DJ Graham.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, his height concerns you.
It's like, huh?
That was it. That was all I had.
I don't know. I don't know how fast he is. Fast enough.
No, I mean, I'm just saying with DJ Graham, his length is what impresses me most.
Yeah, 100%.
We just lost Bob.
I guess with that group though, and I think this is the most interesting thing is the way that they've recruited it allows you to start talking about guys like DJ Graham, or you get into the next class and now you have a Clayton Smith on campus. You could even, I guess in a way, consider the Key Lawrence kid in that group of guys that just haven't played.
Now, let's get a Pearl update. What is she saying? Is she saying anything at this point?
She loves reading. It's all about read. Read, Dad, read. I'm reading books like crazy.
That's interesting. Well, she's
War
your
and
daughter.
Peace.
Yeah.
Third chapter.
Yeah, what kind of books exactly? Are we talking like Clifford the Big Red Dog, or are we talking like crime novels?
Clifford was badass.
I don't even know. Is that a book? Or is that just a TV show? I don't know.
I think it was both.
I apologize. We had some internet connection problems, and Eddie was talking about something I have no idea because I'm just triggered at everything.
No,
today.
we were just talking about the defensive guys and who could be projected as guys that would be drafted. And I think that, you can't have the conversation without mentioning, and it's even though guys that they haven't literally played a snap of real football in Norman, you look at this last recruiting class, whether it be, and I'm going to add Key Lawrence into the group, him, Clayton Smith, like any of the new, is Isaiah Coe somebody that ends up being a draftable guy? Could Josh Ellison be a draftable guy at some point?
I think Jordan Kelly's the guy you have to put maybe at the top of that list just based on all the buzz he's getting.
You know what's crazy? If you said you had to pick one guy from this defense to be a first-round pick, absolutely, if he's the guy, I'd bet on Clayton Smith. He'd be my pick right now. Even not playing a snap of football, he's the guy I would buy into.
Before Perry and Winfrey?
Yeah.
Really?
Because Winfrey, there's still it's not the talent. That's not the problem. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just getting to the draft.
Man, are we going to have to make a bet if I don't know. I'm not even going to say it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
What if Buki gets drafted out of Washington?
I think there should be some type of like seance in Norman if he is. So he's driving a Tesla too.
I got the Good Hands Award for spring.
I do have a soapbox to get on. And it goes back to the Trajan Bridges thing. It's like,
by the way, no update.
Yeah, we still have not had.
I mean, we haven't
filed.
talked since Seth McGowan entered the portal, and I think it is kind of interesting to see what happens at running back. You were talking about like, do you leave spots open or do you bank on the portal? And I mean, if that was Oklahoma's plan this past year, I guess it worked out to a certain extent with Eric Gray, because I think it's obvious that he's probably one of the best transfers in all of college football. But I mean, the numbers are still pretty light over there.
Yeah.
And who knows where Seth McGowan ends up. I mean, I think that
SMU.
we got to get that entire thing wrapped up before you can start moving on, right?
Yeah, you can't really accept a transfer with a guy that has potential charges pending.
Yeah, Gary Patterson might.
True. I don't know if you saw Seth McGowan last year. Is he worth taking the risk?
Sure. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, he hasn't done anything on the field for you to justify that yet.
I had something, and then my head.
You said something about Trajan Bridges' soapbox.
Oh, yeah. My soapbox. This whole thing, and it's not a widespread thing, but I feel partly responsible as a member of the media because, like College Game Day, all these people come in and they do these stories about athletes that came from nothing and came from nowhere. Because it's this great story that wins people Emmys, I think is why they always try and do these stories, and it's emotional, tugs at your heartstrings. But I think it's got to a point where people are just conditioned to think that all young black athletes like grew up in poverty and come from nothing. It's like, Trajan Bridges' family can like afford a used Lexus. It's not like that big of it. Like a lot of kids that are going to college, they didn't come from nothing. I mean, just because a kid's black and he's an athlete doesn't mean that he grew up, with only a mother and came out of poverty in order to get a scholarship and make something of himself. Like a lot of kids, Josh, you can chime in. I mean, a lot of kids that we talk to have pretty normal lives, regular middle class families. I mean, it bugs me that when stuff like this comes, like how's he driving that car? Well, because both his parents work and they do pretty well. Like it's not uncommon for a kid just to be a normal, everyday person that you grow up with.
This is interesting for you to drag me into your soapbox, but no, you're absolutely right. Like you meet kids all the time that are from. I mean, the thing is though, Carey, it works the other way too. Like you'll see a white guy where that question's not asked, and I'm like, I know he doesn't come from much. Like that doesn't, I came from a pretty limited background, like not crazy or anything. I'm just kind of lower middle class. Like, so I get all of that stuff. But yeah, there is a weird, need to kind of, that must be something foul there because of X, Y, Z. And the thing that, one of these things that we always get into with these schools are cheating or paying players. I know plenty of kids, black and white, that if you tried to come at them like that, you're going to hurt your chances more than you're going to help it. Like their parents are way too engaged, way too involved, are smart enough to realize that that's just going to lead you down a bad path. And like, guys, I the one I've used it before, and I've talked about this before. Gabe Lynn's dad. I can remember having a conversation with him where he's talking about, and Gabe Lynn's dad's a police officer.
Yeah.
And there were schools I want to be careful, not schools, but there were random people claiming they represented these schools, that were like, what do you guys need? What can we help you with? What for the next time you come down to, XYZ, what do you want to, anything you guys want to do, that kind of stuff. And he was like, no, don't call here again. And it affected the way he tried to not let it, but it would affect the way they would look at some of these schools because that clearly was going on. It clearly was just part of the whole operation.
Yeah, I mean, I just, like me, when I went to school, played baseball, was on a full scholarship for a couple of years, and it's like it allowed my parents to get me a decent car. Like, it's just like they're not spending money on college, so they'll take on a car payment. Like, that's kind of how it is. I would say it's that way more than not for most kids. But this whole thing about, where to get a car like that, like his parents who make good money.
A name, I mean.
But and like I said, it's just a few people, but just throwing that stuff out there, it's just like,
oh, it's just,
and part of it's just like, are we at fault for this? Yeah, I think we are to some degree. I'm not saying people bad. No, I think media's been bad about that because the only stories they highlight are the really tragic stories.
I think that is something that has been called out more and more over the last couple of years too. It's two things, and it's either the I'm going to make you cry story, or it's the this kid was a bad kid because he tweeted something when he was 13. Like, and that's such bullshit. And then on the other side of it, you have people like the fucking Boston Globe that want to drag people's names through the mud. I thought that was disgusting what they did to Ronnie Perkins and Ramondre Stevenson, and not even mention the DUI that Mac Jones had. In my book, they're about the same. I know he didn't get suspended for it.
To me, not taking an Uber...
More people have fucking died from drunk drivers than they have from smoking weed, I can tell you that.
In this day and age, to get a DUI, and I'm always very careful about this stuff, especially now that I'm grown, but like to not take an Uber...
You got to be an asshole.
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like how?
And I know people make stupid
mistakes.
People make stupid mistakes. I'm just as guilty as anybody having a couple beers somewhere than driving, but it's like it doesn't make sense why the Boston Globe would include something like that.
But I'll say this for to defend the person who wrote the story. Had nothing in the story about that. It was simply the headline writer that put that out there.
Right. And I'm sure that it's one of those situations that everybody is, but it's also kind of goes back into like everything that's wrong with journalism and society right now is you're just trying to get somebody to click on something. And it's probably somebody that didn't even know about football. They just probably Googled Ronnie Perkins.
They click on it because of a headline, and then it doesn't say anything about the drug suspension.
Right. They probably didn't even read the story. The story.
But, it's kind of
some
the same.
Intern at the Boston Globe.
And, it's just like the Mr. Unreliable headline with Kevin Durant years ago.
Sure.
That wasn't anything about the story.
As we know now, that was just foreshadowing.
Well, he doesn't play very often. So
I'm back in on Kevin. We're good.
Are you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think, hopefully the players recognize, because, like, you put that headline on there, all it does is makes the person who wrote the story look bad. I mean, you're hurting your beat writers.
I think you're hurting the overall. Like now they look at that and but they don't see the difference. You know what I mean? Or I don't think that they do, and they just see it.
It just gives people a reason to throw out the fake media,
absolutely,
fake news stuff.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, that's enough soapbox for me for one day and for Eddie, I guess.
Well, Boston Globe is kind of a liberal rag, though. So.
I am not getting into politics. I am out of that business.
I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to run for governor. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, you going to have a bear?
I know. That guy out in California really raised the bar. He's making everybody else look bad.
Well, he's got to beat Bruce.
Who?
What's her name? Kendall now? Or Kylie?
Oh, yeah. Caitlin.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, what? Yeah, I know.
There's nothing better.
I know you're talking about.
There's nothing better than, we need Caitlin in Oklahoma is where we need, she's against, she's against trans sports or whatever.
Right.
Says it's unfair.
I might need those people to vote for me. I'm not going to say anything.
Have you ever seen her on the dais on a roast?
Yes, I have actually.
It is
That's
hilarious.
Really good. It's really
she
good.
just gets killed.
Some of the for some reason I went down a rabbit hole of old I think it was Pete Davidson or something, but old what's it called? Roasts of Comedy Central roast. There's some pretty good stuff in there.
That is all really good.
Usually pretty good.
All right, let's hit some basketball. Josh, sorry, but there has been a finalization of Porter Moser's staff before we podcasted today. Bob, you caught wind of this fairly early in the process, but this is a really big get for Porter Moser to close out his staff, isn't it?
Yeah, get David Patrick from Arkansas to get another associate head coach. I mean, that's just huge. I mean, you think what the staff that he put together between Emmanuel Dildy, KT Turner, and now Patrick. I mean, that's about as good as you can possibly have asked for, or even better than what anyone would have thought coming into his first year at OU. But when you look at Patrick, former head coach, UC Riverside, bunch of connections overseas, Australia, godfather to Ben Simmons from his time that he got to know Simmons' father in Australia. And just, here's someone that just gives you that recruiting presence out in the West Coast now. And you've got Dildy in the Midwest. You've got Turner in Texas. So all these boxes are being checked off. And when you look at Patrick, it seemed like it was going to be, you had to wait till May 1st because there was a big buyout for him if he was hired before May 1st. So that took a little bit longer, but there was no panic until right about Monday night, Tuesday morning, where Illinois started to make this huge charge. Brad Underwood losing assistants to John Calipari and Kentucky like crazy. So they were throwing money at Patrick to try to have him change his mind. And in the course of them trying to do that, it was confirmed that Patrick was coming to OU. And that's just a huge win for Porter Moser to be able to withstand everything and have the staff finalized. And now it's just a countdown to when those 2 scholarships finally get picked.
Now, I mean, you talked about, possibly a bidding war starting there, but seeing the comments from he and Porter Moser, from Patrick and Moser, it sounds like kind of that relationship helped win out and kept him from taking a look at anywhere else.
Yeah, and it was good. I was glad in the press release they mentioned where it started. It was with Rick Majerus at St. Louis. And I know Majerus did a lot with Australia basketball too, so that's where the connection, really formed. Because even in talking with Arkansas writers throughout the course of the last week, no one understood where did Moser and Patrick really get this bond going to where this is such a huge deal. Because I think initially some were skeptical because Patrick been following Musselman around. Like, yeah, he's going to follow Muss wherever he needs to go. And so this sort of came out of left field for some people. But now you understand this isn't just recent. This is like 10, 15 years strong of Moser and Patrick. And it's interesting that there's 2 associate head coaches. So it would be very curious to see how long he can keep this trio intact, because you got to figure that these are guys that are right on the cusp of being head coaches. And even Patrick had a chance. He was interviewed with UTEP and San Jose State following the Arkansas season for those head coaching gigs. So this is a staff that is phenomenal, but I'll be very intrigued just to see how long you can keep it all together with 3 names that are up and coming, and that their time is going to come sooner than later.
As of now, I guess Wednesday afternoon, there hasn't been any update as far as the final 2 roster spots, but that's kind of where we turn our attention now that the 3rd coaching position is filled, right?
Yeah, and I look at Bryce Thompson still holding all the cards. I think Trey Alexander is definitely back in play, and David Patrick was the lead recruiter for Alexander when he was at Arkansas, and Arkansas was one of Trey's top schools. So I think that helps. I think you have these 3 OK Preps kids, but Porter Moser doesn't have any connection with them. But now you've got it. Now you got KT Turner did all the legwork with Bryce Thompson going back to Texas, and Patrick did all the work with Alexander when he was at Arkansas. So you've got familiarity where you thought maybe you didn't have it before, and I still think it's going to be whatever Bryce decides, and everyone has told me it's going to be this week. I think it's just going to happen like on Friday afternoon when no one's expecting it. I don't think there's going to be some elaborate ceremony or like a tweet saying I'm going to do it on this time on this date. I think it's just going to show up. But OU, I know they still feel good about where things stand with their roster. I don't know if they feel great about where they stand with Bryce Thompson, but there's no panic mode that if Bryce were to pick Tulsa or OSU, like they have more options. They're more prepared now than when they just went all in for the 2020 class. They just put all their chips, said we want Trey Phipps and Bryce Thompson, and that's all we want. And when they didn't get Bryce, they had no clue what to do, and they didn't do anything else for the 2020 class. We're here. If they don't get Bryce, I think they can move quickly to Trey Alexander, or I think there are other options in the portal that can get the job done. I do think, from what I've heard, it doesn't sound as if Jackson Robinson from Ada, who transferred from the Aggies, is as big of a target as I once thought. I thought initially that was the one that they were going to lock up and then hold out that last scholarship for whoever was still standing. But as of right now, it seems like Chris Crutchfield in Oregon is making a real push to try to get Jackson there.
I told Bob, if we want these kids to start making decisions and start making announcements, let's just put together a preview of what is left for Oklahoma. And I assume within the hour of putting that out, all the decisions
I
would
see
start
what
coming.
you're gonna say, yeah.
Like, it
I
just
see what
basically
you're saying.
jinx ourselves.
It goes back right at
That's probably-
It goes back to
John Finley
the hot board. It goes back to the hot board. Put the hot board up, and 30 minutes later, Joe John Finley's tight ends coach at Oklahoma.
By the way, isn't the obvious question with everything we've talked about with basketball this? Just how dirty is Brad Underwood? If
I
think he looks-
John Calipari
I think he
comes
looks
and
the other
takes
way sometimes.
2 of your assistants, how dirty are you?
I think he probably looks the other way to a lot of things.
And by the way,
I mean, they turned that thing around rather quickly.
I
helps
think
that
even
you have
Bob had to be
two lottery
embarrassed at the
picks,
way
but-
that they exited the NCAA tournament.
I think everybody was.
It was terrible. Sumu picked the wrong time to have his worst game, but that's how it shakes out. Now they don't have Coburn, no Sumu. Interesting to see what happens.
I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I'm not trying to burn bridges with anybody that was here prior, but you look at the roster, you look at what they have coming in, the guys that they basically traded roster spots for.
By the way, it felt really good seeing Elijah Harkless on the practice court with Porter Moser.
Oh, they got to keep those shots tight because there's not too many guys out there right now.
And I'll say Rick Asanza is loving the first couple of weeks. I think that's you got to know what you got with this kid, or if you have anything. And incomplete would be the way you would grade his first 2 years in Norman. And sources have said that Asanza is loving what Moser is bringing to the table. And let's see if Moser can develop a big guy that maybe some fans had written off at this point. 2 years in, only time he's playing is mop-up duty. If Rick Asanza can become something, he's a legit 7-1. And what they always say, you can't teach that size.
Is this roster better?
Let's see
We'll pump
who
the
they
brakes.
get for the final 2 spots. But this is
play
this is
hypothetical.
a nice group just because they're addressing all their needs. I mean, even if Lon Kruger was still there, they were going to have just a world of trouble or help that they'd had to find in the post, and they've been able to do that. I think they might want one more guy in the post as they reevaluate things, and that's why I think Jackson Robinson's on the outside looking in. I think they'd rather go with someone like 6'9" or 6'10" that can do a lot of different things. But yeah, I mean, get in Jordan Goldwire, get in Tanner Grote, you get the experience, you're getting what you need from them, and it will be what I'll be really watching is what class these last 2 guys in, because I know sometimes you get worried you get too heavy on one class. That's a lot to sort of, either you're storing up scholarships or they're all going to be gone in this 1 year. But I wonder if that's not nearly as much of a concern now with the portal, especially with the free exemption, that people can just take off and it doesn't really matter if you have 6 freshmen on your roster, because you're not going to have 6 seniors. There's no way all 6 of those guys are going to be with you all 4 years.
It's almost like basketball is going to be so much different because there is going to be so much turnover each year than football. Like, you can't necessarily turn over 100-man roster or whatever it would be.
Well, eventually the 1-year transfer thing's going to take effect too.
Sure, but I still think basketball-wise, and especially guys that aren't going to make that jump from, the one and dones or whatever. I could see a time where you're basically transferring and resetting the roster almost every year.
And it's true. I mean, you look 2 years ago, the only 2 players were Jalen Hill and Rick Asanza. I mean, because Gibson and Harkless were last year. And I was like, man, that's got to be crazy. I look, the Buckeyes, they're not like a known huge power, but they've done well. EJ Liddell, who hasn't really made a decision if he's going to do the draft or not, but if he leaves, no one from their 2019 team is still on the roster. This is just the way it's going to go from now on.
That is absolutely amazing.
All right, next week, I got a couple things planned. Josh is chomping at the bit for us to go over ratings and reviews again. He says he's been on the page on iTunes
Sounds
lately.
like we've been canceled over there.
Have we?
We've got almost 1,000 reviews of 5-stars, so we're still rolling pretty good, but there are some definitely interesting ones. I think Bob is starting to pay people to get in the reviews. We're gonna have to talk about that.
I can only guess how that's going. We all
There's a lot
suck
of Bob
and
love.
More Bob.
Yeah.
Also,
constitutional right.
I am going to put together a selection of Bob's voice twin next segment or next week. I played Bob's voice twin for Eddie last week, and he agreed.
It's close.
Are they twins?
It's close.
Wonder who this is.
We'll leave it up to the people of the public, the voting people.
I don't want to ruin it in case this is the same person, but I was with a family member over the weekend that told me they feel there is another media member that Bob has a close voice relationship with.
Well, no, this is a very random. You have to be a guitar.
Okay.
You have to be a guitar geek to know who this guy is. So, who is the other media member?
Jason Kersey. I was told that he felt Bob sounds a lot like Jason Kersey.
No, this voice twin's a lot more on the nose.
I would say I don't really hear it, but I was like, well, maybe I'm off here. I'm not great at that kind of thing.
I could see maybe like over the phone lines, because like Kersey's probably only being heard when he's on a phone line. Mm-hmm. So if you take out some of the fidelity, yeah, I could maybe. That's still a stretch.
Wow, I mean, which one are we taking the fidelity out on?
I just don't. It's not fidelity. I just don't think that they sound nearly as close to this guy sounds.
I'm pumped now. I'm ready for
I was just making a marriage joke, but that's good.
So yeah, you got that to look forward to next week, but appreciate everybody listening as always, and good job, fellas. Great show. Sorry for some of the technical issues that we had to start the show and in the middle of the show, so hopefully those will be sorted out by next week. So anyway, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys right back here. By the way, go to iTunes, rate and review. Maybe say some nice things about people other than Bob, apparently. So we'll see you next week right back here on the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com.